Okay, so I wanted to come on here and quickly add to the piece around the migrant workers' rights. So I was talking about in Canada, where I am. So if you look at the Migrant Rights Network.ca, on their website, they just put out a press release on June 29th, called Migrant Rights Network Welcomes UN Call for Regularization, urges Prime Minister Trudeau to keep his promise. So basically, the UN has called for regularization. Felipe Gonzalez Morales at the UN has just wrapped up his tenure. So there was a final report at the United Nations, and this is a quote that said, "Regularization is a tool of protection and inclusion that benefits migrants, their families, destination countries, and communities. States must provide options for permanent residence, citizenship, and meaningful participation of migrants in host cities." And so, what I was saying is basically, migrant workers will leave their country. They will come to somewhere like Canada, for instance. So here we have migrant workers typically on farms, as well as living caregivers, as nannies. Our nannies originally were coming from places like the Philippines, and eventually there was a shift to Jamaican women, but migrant workers come from all over to be living caregivers. Those are the two primary populations that we typically talk about. But the Migrant Rights Network has been calling for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to regularize here in Canada. And he made a promise back I think it was in 2021 to do it. But they just closed session at the end of last month, and he never mentioned it. And so this is an example of when you can't be paying migrant workers now, is what they'll say, right? It becomes dangerous. Like, you're now, like, to them, they don't see it as, wow, thank you so much for your service. We are bringing you in to do this kind of a work. As while you're here to work, you deserve some sort of protection, some sort of rights, a temporary visa, some sort of citizenship. Like, no, we just bring them in. We do not allow them as like short-term care in some cases, especially for seasonal migrant workers, right? It'll be like, well, the contract is under 6 months. We can't give you benefits. We can't do this for you. You are not a real citizen. And then we ship them back home. And there's no regularization, right? And so this is what a lot of folks on the ground have been organizing to get migrant rights, just so the migrants are able to, who are working for us, right, feeding us, taking care of our families, raising our families. And now in the healthcare industry, I saw recently a clip on Instagram where there was a group of firefighters from South Africa that came to help with the wildfires, right? We have migrant workers coming into this country to do so many different types of work, and often they do not have any access to any sort of rights. Consider them, once they've done the work that they needed to do, we ship them back home, or we see them as like quote unquote illegal immigrants. Right? And because they're not given rights, because they are poor, again, we treat like audacious. The level of disrespect that folks get, it's wild disrespectful. That's exactly what I mean. I'm going to end there, but basically, so what were some of the regularization? UN noted regularization serves as a first step towards concrete economic and social integration for migrants in their destination countries and communities. In economic terms, regularization allows migrants to obtain formal employment, undertake entrepreneurial ventures, establish small businesses, pursue self-employment, and exercise their capacity for innovation. Again, does this sound like something they want people to do? They don't. Not first of all, they don't care, and secondly, you really think they want migrant workers from, like, did you hear what Donald Trump has to say about Mexicans and people? Like, did you hear what Doug Ford said about like, they don't? They're, it's like, it's very racist. They don't. Now you want to bring them here to give them small businesses? That's not how their minds work. They're gonna do whatever they can to block that. That's exactly what this whole blog is about. Anyways, the UN continues to go on in their Human Rights of Migrants report to say, regarding social rights, obtaining regular status also allows migrants to access social security protection systems, as in some countries, universal health care is limited to emergency treatment and the schooling available to migrant children with irregular status is limited to primary education. Right? So if you have a child that's older than primary school, how are you gonna pay for their school fees? They can't access free public school, like healthcare. How do you pay for something if you get sick? Like, none of these things are covered for them, right? And if you're already struggling and people are not paying you right, migrants in regular situations enjoy greater access to healthcare systems and educations. These are things that they need, and so these are some of the work that's being done on the ground. Anyways, but again, it ties into money, capital, and who do we block from ever making sure that they and their lineage will never be financially independent, which is essentially intergenerational poverty.